An introduction to Lazër Radi. Introducing the life, ideals, and unpublished work of a nationalist intellectual in the shadow of fascism and communism. By Âsht. Born on the 29th of January, 1916 in Prizren, Lazër Radi was the son of a father from Jakovo and a mother from Shkodra. Born into an unremarkable working-class family with no real ties to any sort of political background, Radi began his schooling in his hometown of Prizren, completing his elementary education and entering his third year of high school when the Radi family abruptly left Kosovo for Tirana and later Durrës. This was seemingly due to the fact that Radi's two older brothers, Bartholomew and Antonio, had failed to attend their military service in the Yugoslav army. Their property in Kosovo was seized by the Slavic state in response to their fleeing. Radi began working at his half-brother's restaurant and resumed schooling at the Tirana gymnasium. During this period, Radi's father passed away due to old age. After a year at the Tirana gymnasium, Radi was awarded a scholarship by the Minister of Education to attend the Shkodra gymnasium. At the time, Shkodra was the epicenter of Albanian cultural and literary advancement and is still widely regarded as the cradle of culture in Albania, largely due to this period when it consistently produced some of the best-read Albanian authors and thinkers of all time, such as Luig Gurakaki, Migjini, Ernest Kaliki, and others. During his schooling at the Shkodra gymnasium, Radi shared a dormitory with progressives such as Kemal Stafa, Ksemil Broja, and Arshi Pipa, who was famously imprisoned for 10 years by the Hoxha regime for antagonizing the communist regime, with his recitation of a verse from Song of the Flea by Goethe. For a short time, under the influence of Stafa and Broja, who would become founders of the Albanian Communist Party, Radi was part of one of the earliest communist cells in Shkodra during the 30s. However, by 1936 he had disavowed communism and would regularly spend his free time visiting his sister, a teacher in Puka, to avoid Stafa and Broja. He enjoyed his time in Puka so much that he signed up for the summer school there. It was in Puka that Radi would come into contact with Migjini, one of the greats of Albanian literature. Thanks for reading Dionysian Journal. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work. In 1938, Radi was awarded a half-scholarship by the Italian embassy and began his studies at La Sapienza University in Rome. Not much is known about Radi's time in Italy or who he interacted with, but he graduated in 1942 with a score of 110 out of 110 in the philosophy of law and was invited to be an assistant professor at the chair of Professor Vito Caesarini Sforza. He rejected this offer and decided to return to Albania, beginning his legal internship at the law office of Golgotha in Durrës. During the period of 1942 to 1944, Radi was an active nationalist and contributed to nationalist outlets like Bashkimi Kombit, United Nation. He also married Vitor Vushmiki in 1943, obtained his law license in 1944, and practiced law until November 1944. Following the withdrawal of the Italians in 1943, the Germans stepped in to secure their flank, but this all but evaporated within months due to partisan movements from the high mountains of the north and hidden caves of the south. Coupled with the decimation of nationalist forces, some of whom had even been sent to Italy to help out in the Italian Civil War, others who had died in Greece, and many more who had been killed during the partisan betrayal in 1943 over Kosovo, this effectively put the nationalists out of operation in northern Albania permanently. With a sprinkle of support from the British and Americans in the form of arms and money, and considering the much-discussed fact that Germany itself was in a perilous position and having to redirect troops to its own immediate borders, a partisan victory in Albania was all but inevitable. Most people in Tirana knew this, including Radi, who chose to stay in the city at his own peril, much like Father Anton Harapi, who said God had called him to stay in Albania and suffer the communists because his people would need him now more than ever. Radi was more fortunate than Harapi, who was summarily executed without much of a trial. Radi was sentenced to 30 years imprisonment for involvement in politics through journalism and hard labor, which was a punishment for writing his magnum opus, Fascism and the Albanian Spirit. Radi had never wanted this work published, but the Italian Foreign Ministry did so anyway, making it the official Italian edict and the formal theology for Italian fascism in Albania. It is not known when this work was written or how the Italian Foreign Ministry got their hands on it, but we can deduce that it was written sometime between 1937 and 1941, when Radi was between Italy and Albania. To this date, there has never been a translation of this work, not in Italian and certainly not in English. For this reason, I have taken it upon myself to complete an English translation that maintains the tone and message of Radi, the general feeling among the central Albanian working class of the time, and the polemics of Radi himself, who at times seems to argue a more communist than fascist stance. Radi's style is not unique or difficult to understand. It is a well-aged example of the hopelessness of the average Albanian in this difficult era, the constant political upheavals with little to no change for the ordinary man, and the sheer hatred for a political class that was seen as a group of traitorous usurpers who had entirely moved away from the political ideals of Ismail Kamali, Hassan Prishtina, and Fan Nali while killing off their own warrior class, Badrum Kuri, Isa Bolatini and Avni Rustemi, so as not to be threatened by them. Radi's life remains somewhat of a mystery to us. He had several children with his wife while interned in the camps for intellectuals. Following the collapse of communism in 1990, Radi, his wife, and children were freed. His children, who had been cruelly kept away from education as a twisted form of punishment that all intellectuals with children were subjected to, decided to emigrate. In 1997, Radi's wife sadly passed away, and he would join her not long after, in 1998. The first chapter of Fascism and the Albanian Spirit will be released on Saturday, the 24th of August, on this Substack. I will do my best to release one chapter per week until the book is finished. In memory of Lazër Radi, 1916 to 1998. Thanks for reading Dionysian Journal. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work.